Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the LeanTossup College Football Podcast. It is week 4 here. We've gone. This is actually our fifth week, week 0. But yeah, it wasn't a bad week. Not a great week for us specifically, but we had an amazing week a couple weeks ago, so it's fine. Some really kind of close calls there on stuff that probably should have come through uh, that didn't, but we'll talk a bit more about that later. So I'll introduce my co-host here at Buckmetrics. How are you feeling about this upcoming week?
Um, it better be better than the last week. I'll just say that. I think you had a better week than I did. I uh, I really got punched in the face just as I kind of thought after we had that blowout week two weekends ago. We kind of knew that something bad was just around the corner, and boy, it didn't take long.
Yeah, usually something always happens with that, right? Like you're always like, oh yeah, everything's going great, and then um, all of a sudden you don't. All of a sudden you lose some there. Yeah, I mean there was bad some big blow ups there in terms of some stuff. I'm still really mad about Miami at Texas A&M. That one, like, I don't know how Miami didn't win that game outright. I honestly don't know. Like they really should have won that game outright. Um, but I don't
Yeah,
know.
well, not that we haven't seen that plot before many times in Eugene, Oregon. So,
That is true. That is true. So, all right, let's look at the dashboard here. So, what just happened? Where are we now, and what happens next? So, let you take it away from there.
sure, and I'll mention that we're going to actually break this up into 2 episodes. So this episode is going to be just the dashboard, and then the next episode is going to be give us a chance to do some more deeper of the deeper dives, and then look at this upcoming weekend's games. So the dashboard, first portal, the week that was, just looking back at what we said and where we were right or wrong. I started out by putting us on alert that Oklahoma might have had a fraudulent dominant win when they beat Kent State, because they only had 134 yards running, which is one of those telltale signs, less than 4 per carry. And my gosh, they kind of put that one to shame. They actually just crushed Nebraska. Makes you just really wonder where Nebraska stands. We'll get to that a little more in a second.
Well, yeah. So, just a quick point on that. Nebraska paid an extra $8 million to get blown out by Oklahoma, and I mean,
Yeah,
we'll never know how Scott Frost would have done. He also could have gotten blown out, so it doesn't really matter that much. But like, man, if you just hadn't have paid an extra $8 million, you probably would have had like materially the same result. So that's
yeah.
kind of I think that's kind of funny.
It's just a different kind of agony, a different flavor. Yeah. um, we mentioned last week that there might be a new Syracuse narrative here, and they went to 3-0 with a win over Purdue, and that's going to be in the next episode. One of our deeper dives is just what's going on with Syracuse, and is this sustainable? Um, Jeff Sims, I noted that he had a QB plus of a measly 29, which is horrible, in Georgia Tech's win over Western Carolina. And he followed that up with a QB plus of 53, which is really horrible as well, in a huge loss to Mississippi, 42-0. So no bottom in sight for Georgia Tech. It keeps on getting worse and worse. Um, I mentioned that Utah being -4 at New Mexico was a sign that they could be in trouble, and my gosh, they are in trouble. Um, Bye, miners. We're no longer a Utah pod, at least not this year. Um, what else? BBMI, the brand-based market inertia. I had a couple of hot takes on that. One was right. I mentioned that the Minnesota giving 23 to Colorado at home just seemed that people weren't getting the full gist of how bad Colorado was and how good Minnesota was. And that went up to, I think that closed around 27 or 27 and a half. And Minnesota covered that easily. I think they had that covered by halftime, actually.
Yeah, that was just a route that was, and again, there's questions about like they actually had to post. The University of Colorado had to post something like that says like, yeah, we're not happy with the results, but maybe we'll get them this week. We'll get UCLA this week. But by the way, have you seen how UCLA is playing? They might actually be able to. Um,
Yes,
but yeah, no, not a good not a good not good results there in Colorado.
not at all. It's gruesome. Um, the other BBM I mentioned was Rutgers giving only 16 at Temple. I thought was just a sign that the people aren't understanding just how bad Temple is, and clearly I think I overrated Rutgers a little bit. one of the storylines was Rutgers was without their QB. Um, Knowing him and how bad he was last year, I don't even know if that's a plus or a minus. Rutgers pulled out the game. They won by 2. They actually got outgained by 264 to 201.
Yeah, this one was really surprising to me. I didn't bet this because I just was like, no, I don't care enough to watch this game. But I had Rutgers winning by multiple scores here. I think like 21 or so. And Temple in the up like nearly pulling off the upset is really surprising to me. I did not expect that coming at all.
Especially against Rutgers, who's good on defense. Now, 14 points is nothing to brag about, but I don't have it on schedule to talk about. But it'll be interesting to see how many Iowa scores at Rutgers. That's going to just set football back years.
Yeah, I'm I'm not like I was against Iowa last week. The like I could have had the cover had there not been like an absolute garbage time like 50-yard touchdown run, which is sad. But yeah, no, I am not touching that. Like it is Iowa minus 7.5. I am not touching that. I do not care. I'm just nope. We're not touching that at all. Like I refuse. I'm not even going to think about that game. I just want to. I don't even want to see. I don't even want to see the box score of that game because it's gonna be something stupid. So like no, it's yeah, that's just like I don't want to bet on Iowa, but I also really don't want to bet on Rutgers either. It's like oh
No.
yeah, like it's like here's one team Iowa could beat. Oh, it's Rutgers. Like again, Iowa will eventually at some point play other teams in the Big Ten, and like outside of Rutgers, like maybe Northwestern. They're probably somehow playing Northwestern next week too. But like eventually Iowa will play a team that will beat them, and then we'll be betting against Iowa that week. So, but yeah, just that's not this week.
Yeah, the I think the total like game's like around 33 and a half. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it's I saw it before. It's really low. Let me just call. I have the lines up here. 34 and a half.
Yeah.
But I that spread like I feel like the Iowa minus 7.5 is like we have no idea. Is that book saying we have no idea what's gonna happen? Like anything could happen in this game. So
Yeah, I love betting unders, and I don't think I would even place a free bet on that if it meant I have to watch that game. That's just the good news is it'll be over pretty quickly. That'll be like a 3-hour game if it even makes it that long. Okay. Let's see what else we got here. I mentioned when going over my metrics, I know that Michael Penix was number 13 in FBS in terms of QB plus, and he had a QB plus of 180, which is one of the best efforts this season in their Washington's big win against Michigan State at home.
yeah, this was actually really cool for me. So what happened was I early had been on Michigan State in this game, but then like right before, I think the night before when I was looking across the board again, what I do is I usually give a quick look at some props. And I was really surprised to note that my model had like a 50-50 chance of Michael Penix getting over 2.5 passing touchdowns. And it was like juiced to plus 170. So I'm like, huh, that's interesting. I didn't think he was like a really good throwing, but I looked. I mean, like actually, he throws a lot of touchdown passes. So I'm like, yeah, sure. Let's put a little bit on the Michael Penix over 2.5, and he cashed it like at the half. So
Yeah.
yeah, like it was. I was really surprised by that. And shout out to the model for like you could like it's really cool. Like looking at the board the night before, you could like sneakily find some value in some places. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, one another QB plus point that actually I was right about, or incorporated right, we'll say. I noted that Donovan Smith was like bottom 7 nationally in QB plus. He's the backup quarterback for Texas Tech with Tyler Shuckout, and he was pretty brutal. He had a QB plus of 33 in their 13-point loss to NC State. And I think that was a 13 and a half or a 14-point spread, so they just missed covering.
No,
Tech did.
that was 10.5.
Oh, okay.
I was on Texas Tech. No longer. That was not great. But yeah, that was also a painful result for me.
Yeah. Well, I'd spoken early in the season about Texas Tech hosting Texas as one of those poised to strike at a soft target game, and I just don't think if this guy's your quarterback, they're going to be capable of doing it.
Yeah, that's I've already bet. I think I got it. It was 3.5, and then I got up to 4.5. I grabbed the 4.5 because I saw it in some of the books at 5. I've already grabbed that. It's up to 6.5 now. I like running the model. The model is just like the problem is, and we'll talk a bit about Texas later, I guess. The fact is that like I thought Texas was going to be a team that was going to like massively underperform last week, and they kind of almost did for a bit there against UTSA, but they ended up pulling it
Yeah,
out. But I think that there is now a base level of Texas, and you look at Texas Tech's resume, and it's very unimpressive now. That win against Houston looks horrible, right?
yeah.
And they, outside of that, they beat a D2 team, and then they lost pretty badly to a relatively good ACC team. So yeah, it's not looking too good. You look at Texas; they now have a better resume. I think their offense is too good, and like last week, one of the reasons why they UTSA wasn't able to win or cover was they just gave the ball to BJ and Robinson. He just ran over them. Right, he just kept getting
Mm.
like he's just like, oh, here's 20 yards, here's 30 yards, here's like another touch. Like they just kept feeding him the ball and feeding him and feeding him and feeding him, and this is the thing. And it's you if you don't have a way to stop him, then you're not going to be able to do anything. And I think NC State was able to run over Texas Tech, and I don't know, like Bijan Robinson's going to crush this team next week, and you don't even need Hudson Card really. But yeah, like again, the time will come to bet. Like as we said last week, like a couple of minutes ago, just with Iowa, the time will come to bet against Texas, and we will be there doing that. So don't worry about that. Just we're only a couple weeks away from Red River, guys. It's only a couple weeks away. It's going to be great. You watch. Dylan Gabriel's just going to absolutely destroy this Texas team. It's going to be fun.
Well, I think we talked about this last week, weren't they? Yeah, they were. No, they lost one game going into Red River. They lost to Arkansas, but yeah, they were 4-1 going to Oklahoma. So let's see what happens in that game and how they come out of that one. um, others of my games that I picked, I said to stay away at USC giving 12.5 to Fresno at home. That line seemed like too much to give to Fresno. USC covered easily, but I stand by that because you never know if Jake Haynard stayed in and been healthy, how that might have been a little different.
Yeah, they really weren't particularly competitive, but yeah, I do think there was, yeah, like I stayed away from it and USC did cover and that was fine, but yeah, not I wouldn't have taken that. Even knowing how the outcome had been, I probably wouldn't have taken that. That still seemed a bit iffy to me.
Yeah. Um, I was wrong here. I had Miami getting. I think I grabbed them at 5.5 at Texas A&M. They didn't cover. Just a Mario Cristobal special. We're just going to call it that. He doesn't do it every week, but when he does, man, he leaves no doubt that this is one of those games.
I mean, the thing is like uh Tyler was it Tyler Van Dyke? Yeah, that's his name.
Yeah.
He had like NFL hype, and I think he still has some NFL hype. But like that performance was just like, and they outgained them. They outgained them massively. They had like 22 first
Hmm.
downs. Texas A&M was bad. Like this is not like people like I think. And again, we're seeing. I think we're going to talk a bit about. I think we talk about Texas A&M game versus Arkansas a little bit, but like there's like a if you follow Vegas Insider and a lot of them they report on line movements and stuff, and it's really helpful. They had like there apparently is a lot of sharp money coming in on Texas A&M, and I have no idea why. It's like
I
how
don't get that. Yeah.
yeah, like I don't understand because that line Texas A&M was actually a dog in the look ahead. Now, yes, Arkansas had a bit of a struggle against a D2 team. They kind of got caught sleeping, I guess. But also at the same time, they had played a pretty rough schedule. They had played Cincinnati and they had played South Carolina. So they played two straight SEC games. Yeah, they could get caught looking by a D2 team. But like Texas A&M was still not particularly exciting. Like that was not a like I am not I did not if I'm a Texas A&M fan, I'm not looking at that and be like, "Yes, finally we figured it out with Max Johnson." Like no, that was not like he was pretty bad. And like again, you win 17-9. You have a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown and then I think a field goal. Like
Well, one of
you
the touchdowns was gifted on a muffed punt, right?
yeah, no, it
Yeah.
seems like it was something or like they were almost brought down. I see a rushing touchdown and a passing touchdown. But like
Their second touchdown, I think, was a really short drive based on.
yeah, their passing game, you went 10 for 20 on passing.
Yeah.
That's great for 140 yards. So that's great. Then you run for 124 yards for 3.9 average. That's also great too. Versus Miami rushing for 175 yards and passing for 217. And Tyler Van Dyke going 21 for 41, which is not that much better than 10 for 20. But like this is the thing. Like I don't understand how Like it's really bad. Like this was a bad, horrible performance. And if you're thinking that if you're like buying into Max Johnson hype after a 17-9 win that you should definitely not have won at all, then then God help you for this week because like Arkansas is actually a good team. Like I don't know why and again like sure I'll bet Arkansas at what plus money. What am I getting now? Plus I'm getting plus 110. Sure, I'll take that 100%. Like I'm not like that's money line too. Like
Yeah.
this Arkansas team would definitely beat at Texas A&M, and they probably should. Like I don't understand why they're, but maybe I'm not pricing in how bad their D2 team was, but I don't know. I don't. Yeah, Texas A&M is in trouble. Like that has not fixed any of their problems at all.
No, and we've got a deeper dive coming up on
Yes.
just the magic of that offense that they run. You actually you look good for this one, like you said, for a half, like in UTSA, getting 13 and a half
Look really good at the
at Texas. Yeah.
yeah they shut them out for the whole first quarter, and it was funny because I was like I had so when I have all these different games on, I sometimes forget when games start. So like I accidentally forgot that UTSA and Texas had started, and I missed it for like the first half hour. And I'm like, oh, that game started. Like I think it was 7:30 start. I thought it was an 8 o'clock start. So I turn it on, and then I basically look at that because I have the six box, and then I see it in the box, and it says Texas shut out for the first quarter for the first time in like X amount of games. I'm like, oh, this is going really well, and then
Mm-hmm.
it just went downhill, and that's sad. But yeah, it was like, oh, this is going really well, and then just no, it did not end well. But they really like here's the thing, they really did try. Like it wasn't like it was a good effort by that team though, and I think yeah, they just could they had no answer to Bijan Robinson. That was it.
Yeah. And credit to Sark for beating a team he should beat. That's the kind of game that he can lose, losing to a plucky, well-coached team.
Like
And
Kansas.
yes, thank you. Very well
That
said.
that would be like losing to Kansas.
Yep.
But yeah, no, like he is in the past, and this is one of the reasons why I love the game. He's had problems in that game. Like that is a game that Texas for like the last decade has lost easily, and they didn't lose it this week. So shout out to them for at least having at least one more good week. But like yeah, out of their
Yeah.
298 rushing yards, Bijan Robinson had 183 of them.
Jesus. Wow.
So and like Hudson Card only had 161 yards passing. So like this is the problem. Like Bijan Robinson 3 TDs, 183 yards on 20 carries, 9.2 yards a carry. Like uh what are you supposed to do? What
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Just
what can you do there? That's the thing. So
look forward to Conference USA.
yeah,
That's all you can do.
yeah, exactly,
Say, hey, Rice isn't going to be like this. You know.
exactly, yeah.
And then lastly, boy, I was off on this. I had BYU getting points, and I liked a money line too at Eugene. And I heard a lot of people whose opinion I respect also really liking BYU, and man, they just did not have it for whatever reason. And I think part of that might have been some kind of cosmic, like the football god said, where you're going to give you super bad Mario and super good Bo Nix, and that's just how the whole universe is going to balance this week.
Well, that game is really fascinating because like when you look at it like it wasn't like the most impressive performance by Bo Nix. He only threw 18 times, 18 pass attempts, and they had 44 rushing attempts.
That's how he looks impressive.
Well, see, that's the thing, right? We're gonna
Yeah.
talk about a bit more about this game later, but like, yeah, I don't hate the idea of like I loved BYU in this spot, but yeah, that did not go as expected. Definitely did not go as expected.
Yep. So, then what happened last week that informs the narrative, the next portal on the dashboard. Basically, what happened that confirms or rebuts narratives that we already had in place coming to the week. Um, that Texas A&M effort, like we mentioned some. This what really sticks out to me is their defense was really good. 5.1 yards per play on defense is great. The problem is, just to get more specific onto what you were saying just a little bit earlier, 5.1 yards per play on offense is just gross. Miami has a good defense, but it's a first year thing. And the thing that's scary is this is just in line with what we've seen. It's just like we get this same kind of level of play against, App State, and I forget whichever FCS team they played, but It kind of is what it is, and I'm going to get more to why I think that is in the deeper dive. Um, Michael Penix getting that QB plus of 180 against Michigan State. He also threw for almost 400 yards. Um, really confirming that narrative that we had going into the season. We've seen, not so much this season because they haven't really been tested, but the Spartan defense is not improving, and it's year three. Um, that's got to be a concern at some point, considering Mel Tucker was a defensive coordinator. I think he was a DC under, was it Kirby Smart or Saban?
Uh, I don't think it was Smart. It might have been Saban. I don't remember
Okay.
though. But yeah, no, that is concerning. Like they shredded them in the air, right? Like that's the thing. And again, if you remember, I remember back to last year. So last year I had one of the weaknesses that I identified in Ohio State was running the ball against them. So I'm like, oh, you know who's going to be really good at running the ball against them? Michael, or what's his name? No, Kenneth Walker. Kenneth Walker is going to be really good at running the ball, right? So they'll cover the spread, and then C.J. Stroud just shredded them through the air, like absolutely shredded them. I think he threw for like 400 yards, and like they still haven't fixed that problem, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, okay, yeah. So you got C.J. Stroud. Is Sean Clifford going to shred you? No. Is J.J. McCarthy? No. So it's a somewhat limited problem, but like yeah, when you run into a good quarterback like Michael Penix or C.J. Stroud, watch out. That's going to be a bit ugly there.
Yeah, you've got a ceiling for sure.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, it'll be interesting to see like on which side of that divide Sean Clifford lands. Just something to keep in mind. That might be kind of the litmus test for just how bad they are. Um, Nebraska, this is just interesting. My God, they lost to some bad teams. The teams that beat them, Georgia Southern, as we said, was probably going to be the case. They lost to UAB by 2 touchdowns. Kyle Van Treese had a QB plus of -19. They are outgained by 1.5 yards per play, which is extremely significant. And then Northwestern, who kind of just really kicked off the beginning to the end here. They lost to Southern Illinois by 7 at home, and Ryan Holinsky had a QB plus of 14. I think he threw for almost 400 yards against Nebraska in Ireland. And Northwestern's offense threw for just 4.5 yards a play. Even better is interim coach Mickey Joseph. 1 week on the job, and he fired the defensive coordinator. Um, that's awesome. This guy totally gets what the problem was, whereas Trev Alberts, who was there to fix it, clearly didn't understand that. So I also saw an interesting point or interesting quote in the post game where some defensive player was asked about their tackling, and he said, "Yeah, we usually don't practice tackling during the week, so this week was a little different."
Oh my god, that's
Yeah.
that's insane. Wow. And be like a quarterback being like, "Yeah, I normally don't practice throwing the ball down
No,
the field, but
no, just yeah, I'll get it there when it counts.
that's crazy." I mean, so what are we actually gonna? Could Nebraska actually have like positive regression in the next little bit? I guess now we can maybe look at like positive regression for Nebraska. I guess.
I will. Can you fix that in one game?
Well, what's
I
their what's their schedule now?
Yeah. I
Let me
know they
see.
have that at some point they have that great Friday night game at Rutgers coming up, which is that gets better and better each week.
Yeah, that gets more and more interesting, especially if like Nebraska like they get shut out by Iowa or something. The thing is, it'd be so funny. I was thinking about this, I think yesterday or a couple days ago. Wouldn't it be so funny if you just took like Ohio State's offense and like Iowa's defense, made that into like a super team? Then you could take on Georgia. That would be really
Yes.
funny. I want to try that now. But yeah, no.
So
Yeah,
here we go in Nebraska.
yeah,
They're off this week,
yeah.
and then they host Indiana. So
They
this
should.
might
They can win
be.
that game.
So sometimes in baseball, like a manager will just have like a speech where he totally tears the team apart and then he's seen the schedule. He knows like the next week they're playing just a bunch of crappy teams, and so you can say that really like lifted the team. This might have been it. It's like, okay, we've got a week off, then we host Indiana, who's just having serious problems on offense. Maybe this is gonna at least make people think I've kind of fixed the defense.
But then you go to
Yeah.
New Jersey and a trap
Yes.
game on a Friday night. That's gonna be fun. We're just a couple weeks away from that trap
Yes.
game. So
Circled
yeah,
on my calendar.
yes, of course.
One other thing that stood out that I didn't see this coming at all, but after 3 games, this is a trend. UCLA had 2 fumbles against South Alabama. On the season, they have 3 fumbles, 2 interceptions, and a blocked punt, which is surprising. That's a lot for a pretty veteran team, with a senior quarterback. Um, don't know if this is going to be a repeatable thing, but if you saw that game Saturday against South Alabama, what a heartbreak that was um, for the Jaguars. These were like week one kind of mistakes that they were making in terms of just like, wait, who's supposed to be where, and is this a handoff or is this a pitch? So keep an eye on that. That's just kind of weird to be still happening this late in the season.
Yeah, it was. It's funny you mentioned it was a heartbreak that you had to clarify it was for South Alabama. It was definitely not a heartbreak for the 20 people watching in the stands in
Yeah.
UCLA. But no, yeah. This UCLA team. I don't think they covered the spread against Bowling Green, one of the worst teams in the
Mm-mm.
MAC. And then
Yep.
they almost lose outright to South Alabama as what, 20 something point favorites? Or no, it was 14,
It was 14.
14 or
Yeah.
15, something like that. But like, yeah, this is not good. This is really not good. And like, you're UCLA, like you're supposed to go into the Big Ten, and you're struggling against back teams and like Sun Belt teams. Like, this is a problem. Like, how are they fixing this? You need to fix this. Like, this is not a team that's ready to compete. And I think they have to play. Um.
They're at Colorado. I
Oh,
don't
that's
know
right.
if
We
you
talked.
remember in the preseason pod, I mentioned that UCLA tends to start hot and then stink once classes begin. And I think that narrative is going to fit, but not for the right reason. It's just because they have Colorado, so they just have just an absolute bum schedule. Then they host Washington, they host Utah, they're off, and then they're at Oregon. So you could be looking at going from 4-0 to 4-3 without
Yeah.
even trying.
Yeah. It's yeah, it's not good. Like again, if you're struggling against non-conference teams and you're in the Pac-12, like just God help you. Like they could be in for some rough games the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think we're looking at another really bad home attendance game for Washington because that's on a Friday night, and Friday night traffic in Pasadena is no joke, man. I just think people are just going to say I'm not bothering. That's a horrible, horrible place to get to after work. All right. What else did we come up with here? Tulane actually held Kent State to a QB plus of 47. And I bring this up because this is interesting. They now have the number one pass defense in all of FBS. Tulane does. We're going to get to them later, but I think they're for real on defense. It's interesting. They're going to be one of my plays this week. We'll get into it a little bit more later, but their defense seems to be for real. Um, Boise State. For some reason, this was on FS1. I don't know why this is a nationally televised game. They hosted Tennessee Martin, and again, it's kind of underreported just what their struggles are. They only had 4.5 plays per yard, or yards per play on offense, hosting Tennessee Martin, and they really didn't put that game away until much later than they should have. That was, you know, they got stuff to fix, and I don't know if they're capable of fixing it.
Yeah.
Louisiana, they lost 21-33 to Rice. I had mentioned in the preseason that I think a lot of people were just kind of looking at, oh, good team. They kept the assistant. Everything's going to still be on track. They have got some problems. 175 yards. They only ran 43 plays all game. 4.1 per play. They were only 3 of 13 on third and fourth down. Um, the more we go along, it seems like South Alabama is pretty clearly the best team in the Sun Belt West. With Troy with that horrible loss at App State, Louisiana, this just kind of speaks to, the Conference USA is a step down from the Sun Belt. To have this kind of play makes you think that Louisiana is not going to be a serious contender for the Sun Belt West title. Incidentally, in that game, Rice quarterback T.J. McMahon. Now, in fairness, he is the backup. The starter got hurt against USC. He threw 3 picks, and that gives him 6 through 3 games. My goodness, that's a lot. Um, and then finally, Arizona. They beat North Dakota State by 3. North Dakota State is just the absolute dominant team in FCS. I think that was just a 1-point game, and this is kind of an embryonic stage for whatever Arizona is putting together. I bring this up. It's very interesting in that they beat a good team. They found a way to beat a team that really knows how to win, and they did it with their top two receivers, Jacob Cowing, the UTEP transfer, and Tataroa from McMillan, or Tataroa McMillan. He's the kid from Orange County whose name I could never remember. They combined for just 6 receptions and 74 yards, and pulling out a win when you've got two of your biggest weapons just doing that says a lot for where they're going. Um, they might make a bowl. I can tell you that as a USC fan, I'm not looking forward to playing at Arizona because that team doesn't quit at all either.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's the same kind of thing as Kansas too. I view Kansas and Arizona as very similar projects, and in many ways they are. But yeah, like Arizona is doing really well. They're in really good shape. They're definitely the best Division One team in Arizona right now.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, they're making a lot of really good progress. I'm excited to see what they have.
yeah. Um, except when they play my guys, I'm not excited to see that. They
That's
can take
that
that one off.
that's fair.
Market intelligence. So these are based on opening lines and just what are they telling us that I didn't at least see coming until Iowa State giving two to Baylor at home. I'm wondering if before the season we said, Iowa State's window had closed, and I said, well, that window is closed, and maybe there's a next window coming up. Kind of wondering if this is signs of Iowa State's next window, or is Baylor just a little more in trouble than we thought?
I kind of think it's Baylor. I honestly think I think the problem is Baylor. I think what you like Iowa did beat Iowa State did beat Iowa, so that's actually like not bad. But like at the same time, like I don't know, man. Like the Baylor, like here's I guarantee this is what the line is saying. Like they're saying, okay, we don't actually think they didn't think Oregon was like that good. So, but then Oregon destroyed by BYU, and then BYU beat Baylor. So now you're like, okay, well, we didn't think Baylor was that. We didn't think like Oregon was that good, and Oregon beat a BYU team that beat a Baylor team, and now we've got Iowa State. So like my model, I think actually has this as about even. I think I have this basically like dead even. But no, like I think that this is more indication of an anti-Baylor play than a Iowa State play. If I had to hazard a guess, but I think Iowa State is like not bad. But I just don't think I don't think they have the power to like. Yeah, I have this Baylor -2, so I actually do have Baylor favored, but I still have this is very close. But yeah, it is kind of crazy that we're looking at basically a Baylor team that was ranked in many ways was well outside of Texas and Oklahoma the favorite to win the Big Ten, Big 12,
Hmm.
and all of a sudden they're a dog to Iowa State, and it's actually I've seen that line go to 3. That line's ballooned to 3 on my book, so I'm getting +3 +125 money line. So yeah, there's a lot of money coming in Iowa State here, and that's not a good sign for
No.
the Bears.
Yeah, it's interesting. And it might be, I don't know if you've heard of the Patrick Ewing theory. Have you heard of this nonsense? Do you know who Patrick Ewing is?
No, who is he?
So he played for the Knicks. He played originally for Georgetown. He was by far the most dominant center in college basketball when he played at Georgetown. He's number one overall pick by the Knicks, and he took them to the playoffs quite a few times, but they never really came close to a title. And then he got hurt, and then the Knicks came very, very close to winning a championship. And so there's this theory bandied about that, like, if you lose a guy that you think is really important, but he's not really proven any kind of mettle in terms of getting you to a championship level, maybe losing him is not a big loss. And I'm wondering if there's a little bit of that with Brock Purdy leaving in terms of, he raised Iowa State a lot, but maybe he had limits. He always had he was good for a handful of really dumb moments every season. I mean, really dumb, costly moments. So maybe there's some of that at play. Maybe this new guy Decker is actually just kind of has his wits about him more than Purdy.
Well, to be fair, he was taken at he was Mr. Irrelevant for the NFL draft, which is for those who aren't aware, that is the last person drafted in the thing. Which, to be fair, calling them Mr. Irrelevant is not fair at all because basically immediately after the draft, there's this rush for a bunch of undrafted. Like there's like hundreds of undrafted guys that get signed to practice squads and whatever, right? So to say that he's Mr. Irrelevant and he's bad is like that title is a bit dated now, but it's a cute thing to say. But the best part is that was he was drafted to a San Francisco team that had, among other things, it had one Trey Lance, a top 3 draft pick from a couple of years ago, two Jimmy Garoppolo, who was signed on a contract and is supposed to be the backup thing to Lance. Three, it also included oh, what was the guy's, I think Nate Sudfeld? No, or was Nate? There's two I keep confusing. Is it Nate Sudfeld or the one? But basically, he was like the fourth quarterback on their roster. They drafted him as the fourth quarterback, and he hasn't played, and he won't. He probably won't see the NFL this year unless something horrible happens to Jimmy G, which would suck. Having your two starting quarterbacks go down in the same season for San Francisco, but no, I think that yeah, he maybe like he was good, but he also limited the program. The bigger one I thought was Brees Hall, and Brees Hall has had
Hmm.
some impact with the Jets, but not a ton of impact with the Jets. We're starting to see a bit more. It's only been 2 weeks, right? So we'll see maybe if he gets more down the stretch. But I don't know this. Yeah, like this I think a lot of people penciled in Iowa State to just get absolutely crushed once Brock Purdy and Brees Hall and all these other guys were gone, and
Yeah.
they're holding their own. I mean, they weren't ranked. I mean, they have a better claim to be ranked than some other teams. I'll talk a
Yes.
bit more about them later. But no, like they have a better claim to being ranked than some other teams do, and it's interesting. The other interesting thing on that was that their coach Matt Campbell, he was, if I remember correctly, was he rumored for the ND job, or was that the coach of Cincinnati, Luke Finkel? That was Finkel, right?
For the indie job,
No, for Notre Dame. Notre Dame. Sorry, Notre
Notre
Dame. Sorry,
Dame. Yeah, I think that Fickle is probably a name for that.
Finkel. Yeah, Matt Campbell was.
Actually, he was actually USC had a deal lined up with him until they were able to get Riley done. He
Yeah.
was like their plan 1A.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
That's well, I mean, Matt, again, we're talking about a lot of different teams now. Matt Campbell could be an attractive target for some of these. Like, if
Yeah.
they have a good season, who knows what Nebraska's going to do? There's rumors that they're going after Urban Meyer, but I think those are mostly a joke. I think, but like Nebraska could be looking, Georgia Tech could be looking, Arizona State, like a lot of these programs, they could potentially call on Matt Campbell. So we
Yeah.
might see more if Iowa does well, which I kind of think they still lose this game, but we'll see. Let's see where this line gets to. I think if I start seeing a 3.5, maybe a 4, that money line gets a little bit up to plus 150, I might take that money line. So we'll have to see.
Okay. The next game is some of these lines, since this is based on opens by Circa, this might be old. Penn State giving 25.5 to Central Michigan at home. I bring that up because Penn State just beat Auburn by 29 on the road. Um, that's just really just putting some horrible context on what Auburn is and just what they're looking at going forward. You know, they're saying, yeah, Central Michigan will do better at Penn State than Auburn did at home against Penn State. Bad look, man.
Yeah, that was the thing I had. It's up to 28 now, so it's
Yeah.
increased a little bit. But no, I mean I had Penn State -3, and that was I was never worried about that. Like, and that was an amazing call. I called it out on the podcast last week. I said look, like I just think this Penn State team is better than this Auburn team, and they just crushed them, straight up crushed them from beginning to end. And yeah, like Auburn is in problem, is in trouble. That's another program that's in trouble this year. But yeah, I worry about these massive spreads. And then, so that was a game I was listening to, and they kept talking about Sean Clifford and how he's improved, and it's just like okay. So and then the CBS ones, it's Lee Corso, right, on CBS? No, who's the
He's on
CBS ones?
ESPN.
It's Brad
Yeah.
Nessler and
Gary Danielson.
yeah, they were talking about him, and they're like, oh, I think Penn State's going to be one of the three in the Big Ten, and I'm just like like there's way too much hype about this, and I think they conflated. Okay, Penn State is crushing Auburn with okay, Penn State is good. It's not like that Auburn is bad, right? And I think that's the problem, right? And this is like as commentators, like okay, sure, you're basically overseeing a blowout at this point. Like Penn State has clearly won this game. It's a blowout. You've nothing better to talk about. But like, I'd love as a as people watching games, I'd love it if they put more context of like, well, Auburn could be not great this year. At that point, then this loss means nothing. Not like, oh, Sean Clifford just keeps improving every year, and he's just getting really good now. And like, no, like it's just
No.
like Auburn is bad. And I even like I said this specifically. Like I'm like, this isn't a bet on Penn State. This is a bet against Auburn last week, and that cashed. But like, I'm not touching this at all. Like this is don't touch this game. But yeah, like the time to bet against Penn State will be soon. Well, you know what? What do I have this game at? 28 is a lot of points. That is a lot of points. I mean, Central
Y-
Michigan covered that against Oklahoma State. So
Yeah. Um, I just don't know what we have in Central Michigan,
that is
especially on the
true.
road. They've been kind of they're beaten pretty soundly by South Alabama. Now maybe that's not a bad loss. Maybe that'll actually look like a quality loss at the end of the season.
Hmm. Well,
Um,
the thing of it was like Auburn actually did outgain Penn State on the in the air, which is interesting. So I don't know. Maybe let me see here. Let me see if I can find this game. It's hard to find this game on my sheet here. Uh, yeah, that's 28 points is a lot of points. I'll think about. I'm gonna think about that. If that gets a little higher, maybe you could see. Maybe I could see. Maybe I could see a little play for me. We'll have to see.
okay. This one actually has moved quite a bit. Duke, I think, opened as a 9-point dog at Kansas, and I think it's at 7 now. When I first saw that 9, I thought, wow, this tells me that the market thinks Duke is for real. And then the move since actually really confirms that. And it's not just the market. It's, I'm seeing multiple data points, my own, several of my metrics just have me to believing in the Duke offense. And, I think if Elko's there, your defense always has a chance.
Yeah. So actually, just quick 2 points. The Penn State one, I've got Penn State minus 17. So there is some value on the
Oh
spread there.
boy.
It's not
Yeah.
not a lot of value, but some value. That's like a play where it's like, okay, you're hoping for a garbage time cover for Central Michigan. For Duke, I've had this game set basically as even. Iowa, like I'm not Kansas versus Duke. I've had this set as dead even for 2 weeks. I actually believe I have Duke as a slight favorite in this game right
Yeah.
now, actually, and it's fascinating because I thought I was gonna like love Kansas in this game, but the
Hmm.
model was big on Duke, and I'm starting to think that the model might actually be right here. I've bet Duke already. I think I got Duke 8.5, and I don't think I grabbed the money line. I'll have to go back and get the money line, but the thing of it is, like, you're now looking at when you start looking at comparing resumes, right? So Duke beat Northwestern, not a good team, but they beat them pretty handily. Kansas beat West Virginia, a team that we don't particularly think is good. And then they also destroyed Houston, which is now like we're looking at Houston. Houston's a
Houston's
bad team.
they're 1-2, yeah.
Yeah, Houston's only win is against UTSA. They beat UTSA.
In overtime, right?
Yeah, they beat them in overtime. They had to take them like 3 overtimes. They beat UTSA in like 3 overtimes. Lost to Texas A&M. That just got crushed by NC State. And now we're like, oh man, Kansas beat them. Now they're 9 point favorites over Duke. Like, here's the thing: their quarterback for Kansas, Jalen Daniels, just amazing. He's like a amazing running threat and throwing threat. He's actually really good.
Hmm.
But this team still has problems. Like they still give a lot of points that they shouldn't give. Like they chronically go down 14-0 in the first quarter. I don't hate the idea of like a Duke play of like +8. Like you're getting more than a score by Duke. And remember we talked about that quarterback for Duke. That quarterback for Duke is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
I've got this as a pretty high scoring game. I suspect Duke's going to be able to move the ball pretty well against Kansas's defense. So yeah, give me I've got this like a 70-point score. I've got like Duke 39, Kansas 36. Which the thing was it was so funny because last weekend I had Kansas as a massive favorite over Houston. I had them like favored by like 2 scores or something, like 2 or more scores. And I'm like, that's crazy. Like sure Kansas will probably win. They're not going to win by like 14 points. They won by 18 points. So I'm like, wow, like shout out to Kansas for like putting it on like to Houston and actually proving the model like bang on. So good for them. But yeah, no, I think this game is gonna be very close. And the fact that you're getting 7.5, I mean, I got 8.5, but 7.5 is perfectly fine too. I think this game is like a field goal, which is again a terrifying thought in college football. So
Yeah. Very true. Um, then the last one here. think I think this one opened at Pick'em. TCU at SMU. Now it's SMU giving like a point and a half. This tells me that the SMU offense is for real. Um, and this game is interesting to me too because every once in a while there's one of these angles where you could have, I think the SMU defense is going to be as familiar with TCU's plays as the TCU offense, seeing as they practiced against that all the time for years and years while Sonny Dykes was at SMU. Now he's trying to put in the same system at TCU. Um, I'll probably pay SMU here. That total of 68.5 especially. Um, SMU might really have something here this year.
Yeah, I've got totally my book's got 70.5 is the total now.
Hmm.
And I've got SMU plus 1.5 plus 105. So this I've seen this line flip. Originally this was like even. I've seen TCU plus money. Now I see SMU plus money. So my model does like TCU, but my model also wanted to fade SMU last week too, and they actually were able to somewhat hold their own against Maryland. But my model had Maryland as big favorites, and they did cover the minus 2.5, but they only won by 7. So I don't know. Like SMU could be for real. I have a problem laying it with TCU. I think the play would be SMU, but we'll have to see. Tanner Mordecai, he's actually pretty good. Like he's not a
Yeah.
bad quarterback at all. I kind of do like this SMU team, but I just I don't know what TCU is going to give us. Right? Give me right. So I'd rather probably lay off this game, but it's gonna be fun to watch though.
Yeah, Mordecai was good last year too, and they hired the right guy in Lashley, who I think is a good logical guy just to pick up where clearly where Dykes left off. Um, all right, to my favorite hashtag BBMI, brand-based market inertia. Basically, the market has too much inertia built into some of these teams based on their brand, is not really catching up to how good or bad they are. I think we're seeing both sides of this. Virginia at Syracuse, Syracuse giving only 8. I really like Syracuse here. And, the next episode we'll have a deeper dive on Syracuse.
Same. Yeah, that 8 is gone now. It's 10 on my book. It's to 10.5.
Wow.
I have this as 14. I grabbed a 9.5, I think. But yeah, I was already on Syracuse. There's probably some more room to run here, but like this Virginia team is pretty bad. Like they did almost lose to Old Dominion. They lost pretty badly to Illinois. That's not particularly a mark of a good team. So yeah, I'm already on the cues here, and this is a Friday night game too, right? You don't have a lot to watch on Friday night.
Hmm.
So like I've got Syracuse minus 14.5. So there is still some value on the minus 10.5, not a lot, but I'm not taking the Cavaliers. Yeah, I'm not taking the Cavaliers here. I'm taking the cues. Also, if you can get some Garrett Schrader props, um,
Hmm.
if you can get him over 1.5 passing touchdowns, I got that about 41%. So if you
Yeah.
get that like plus 120, that's value. Yeah, you could do some pretty cool stuff with this. So I think I am I'm all over the cues here. Let's go. Let's go. That's their mascot, right? There's not actually a mascot. Or no, the orange, I think, right?
The
Yeah,
orange.
yeah.
Yeah.
Not they're not the cues. That's not an actual word. So
No. um, UNLV giving 3 at Utah State. And this is actually, I think this opened closer to pick 'em, and the movie money's coming on UNLV. Um, I think that people are, I mean, okay, sure, everybody's sleeping on UNLV because I'm the only one in the whole world that's outside of the 702 that's believed in them. But I think people are really not getting past Utah State is really not the same team that was Mountain West Conference champs last season. And I think this should be, I mean, it's hard to say UNLV should be closer to 7 considered on the resume last season. But if you kind of just blind resume what they're doing this season, kind of hard to say that they should be giving, 3.
yeah, I've got a huge value. I think this kind of breaks my model because I have Utah getting like a field goal and that's it. So it's probably something wrong in the model. But I like UNLV is minus 2.5. I really like that 2.5. That's actually a really nice 2.5. I would take that 2.5. Again, the cool thing about college football that I love is like every week there's a bunch of these like minus 2.5s, minus threes that are just blowouts. And if you can
Hmm.
find them, like last week, Penn State Penn State won by 29, right? Minus 3. SMU versus Maryland. Maryland wins by 7 pretty comfortably too. It was a competitive game, but they did pretty comfortably win by the 7. That was minus 2.5. So if you can find these kind of low, like sometimes when there's these low spreads in some of these games, you can find edges on this where it's like this team is just way better than this team, and then you
Yeah.
can get like a minus 2.5. Because the thing of it is, and this is the thing, right? How many people are looking at this game saying Utah State, they won the Mountain West last year?
Yep.
Only plus 2.5. I get them at plus 125. That's great. That's great value. I'm gonna get.
I'm getting points. What?
Yeah, I'm getting plus 125 on the conference US and UNLV won what 4 games last year. They're horrible. I'm
No,
gonna
they won two.
exactly. That's the thing. So this happens all the time, and this is why that number exists. Because if you're getting +7 with Utah State or whatever, +7 maybe plus 230 or something, everybody's going to be on Utah State, right? And you need to balance that money out. So because the books have to balance that money out, you get amazing lines like UNLV -2.5. You get stuff like Penn State -3. You get all this stuff because if they make that line too much, they're going to get way too much money on the other side.
Yeah. And since we are a UNLV football pod, this is good news. The next 7 games for UNLV, 6 are actually on CBS Sports Network, nationally televised, and the other one is on NBC at Notre Dame. 7 straight games on national TV for the Rebels. I love it. Oh, oh no, shoot. Um, there we go. Sorry. And then the last one are BBMI, Wisconsin at Ohio State. That spread looks a little short to me. I grabbed 17. I think it's up to like 19 and a half now. The total opened at 51 and a half, which seemed short to me. And now it's up to 56 and a half. So my guy, God bless him, he takes 3 days to post totals just so these kind of things don't become available to people like me. Um, Incidentally, I'm going to go to Vegas on a Sunday coming up here pretty soon just so I can grab some of these lines when Circle releases them on Sunday. But that 51 total, that's assuming that the Wisconsin defense can travel, and they have a lot of young guys. They lost a ton off their great defense last year. Kind of the test of a good defense is, does it travel? And I'd say if we want to make it a real testy test, we would say, can it travel to Columbus? Um, I have respect for Jim Leonard, but I think Wisconsin can get, or Ohio State can get most of the way to that 56 by themselves. They kind of just do whatever they want.
One thing I will say about this game is that I am a little worried. I'm actually worried and I cannot believe I'm saying this. I'm worried for Ohio State in this game. And here's why. So I, the more I think about it, the more I am a little bit worried about Ohio State. They are 1-2 ATS. They didn't cover the spread against Notre Dame. They didn't cover the spread against Arkansas State. They decided to hang 70 against Toledo because Toledo scored 21 points, and if they hadn't have hung 71, then they would have been struggled to cover the spread. They were up by like 50 at the half, and I'm like, okay, Toledo's going to get the cover here because I didn't actually bet on this, obviously, but I think the spread was like 30 or so. And like it's so funny because CJ Stroud had like 6 passing touchdowns, and I almost feel like CJ Stroud, like after his fifth pass, like after his third or fourth passing touchdown, he's like, "Oh, okay, so we're done here, right? I can sit on the bench." And Ryan Day's like, "No, we're gonna cover the spread. You're gonna keep going out there. You're gonna keep scoring points until we make sure we get this cover because they hadn't actually covered a spread yet." And Wisconsin, and here's the thing. We talked about this last year. Ohio State has had problems last year. You look at the Oregon game, you look at the Michigan game. They have had problems when they're playing against a team that is able to run the ball and run and run and run and run. That's the one thing. That's like the thing Wisconsin does. They run the ball, and then obviously, Graham Mertz throws interceptions. It was so funny because I was looking at the box scores, and it was like Wisconsin was just blowing out this D2 team, and people were like, oh, I think they showed a highlight of it. It's like, oh, Wisconsin getting a good in a tune game. Like, oh, what was Graham Mertz stat line? And sure enough, he has an interception against the D2 team. Like, how? But whatever. Like, I'm a little worried. Do I think Wisconsin can win this game? Probably not. Do I think Wisconsin can cover this spread? Yeah, because Wisconsin actually has a half decent defense. So I don't know if I'm betting this game, which I'm not sure where the line is on this right now.
I think it's up to like 19 and a half.
One of them exploded. I think this one was that one. Um,
You think, let's just,
18 and a half. I got 18 and a half in my book.
wow. Let me
But
just kind of just ask you a question on this real quick. Ohio State. This is Ohio State. This isn't Arizona State. You said Wisconsin's got a halfway good defense. You know, you've got to be like a Notre Dame level of defense. I don't know if that defense is going to travel. It's just so many young guys, and I think it's their first road game of the year too, because they've all been at home so far against New Mexico State and whichever Illinois State I think it was, and then they lost it to Wazoo at home. Um, I got to see it on the road. me see.
That's fair. I could see not buying into it completely yet because of the travel, and that's fair. But I don't know. I'm a little worried about hanging the points with Ohio State. Like you're now looking at this now. You look back now. They beat Notre Dame, a Notre Dame team that struggled to beat Cal. They beat them by 11 points. They didn't cover a 45-point spread against Arkansas State. They had to hang 70 to cover a 30-point spread against Toledo. That's a little concerning. And this is the thing, and this is what gets me annoyed too about commentators and stuff, because I remember seeing on the one broadcast, I saw the highlight package for it was Ohio State versus Arkansas State. They're like, oh yep, Ohio State getting the job done, and like they're cruising to like a 30-point win when the spread is 45. And it's like, this is the thing, right? Like, you have to talk about expectations here. Like, that commentator has no idea what the spread between Ohio State and Arkansas. I know what the spread was because
Yeah.
we're sick people, right? But that's not the point. The point is they should actually have spread, like when they're talking about these games, they should actually put the spread up there and be like, this is what how this team did relative to market expectations. They actually really should. Now I understand why they don't have that, because they don't necessarily want to encourage gambling, but like they really should have some sort of useful metric by evaluating how these teams are doing. Because if you see it like, oh man, Ohio State, they destroyed that Arkansas State team. Like, but they were supposed to destroy the Arkansas State team, right? So you get stuff like when there's these teams become massively overhyped because there's no concept of how they were supposed to do. Like obviously when someone beats a team, you understand that's an upset, right? You're like, oh, that's a big upset. But you should have like there should be some context for these big games when there's massive blowouts, what that game should have been, right? So I don't know. I could see the whole maybe that they think like maybe Wisconsin's defense can't travel, but like I don't hate Wisconsin here. I don't hate Wisconsin. It's weird, but I don't hate them.
All right, different sides. I like that. Those are the most exciting games.
I might not bet this. I probably I need at least the 17 and a half, which I have now. But like maybe I'll see if this goes a little higher, because I think this is going one way. I think this is gonna go like to 20 or something. But we'll see. Because the thing is, there's not a lot of dead points. Like there's a bunch of dead points here. Like 18 and a half is nothing, right? 19 is nothing. 20 is like 20 and a half. Maybe I pull the trigger on 20 and a half, but we'll see.
Okay, yeah. If you can't get that, let me know. Maybe I'll book your bet on that one.
Okay, we'll see.
Some of my metrics, so my QB plus metrics, and again, this is against FBS opponents only. I'm not going to read through the top whatever, just some names that stood out as interesting to me. Number three quarterback in FBS is Seth Hennigan of Memphis. Wasn't aware of this, but apparently Memphis might have a pretty good offense this season, which is a change since Norvell left. Number 12 is your guy and mine, Graham Mertz of Wisconsin. Let's see if this holds up. Um, I say no. You're saying maybe. We'll see in Columbus. And then number 16, Chance Nolan of Oregon State. Not what I want to see as a USC fan whose team's going to go to Corvallis on Saturday. Um,
Yeah, I mean, but again, Caleb Williams is what
uh,
he's up there, right? He's top five, right? So
yeah, I think I've got him fourth now. Yeah,
yeah, so like again, and the thing is, there's still a lot of odd metrics in there because, like, outside of playing Rice, USC has really not played. Like, some of these guys have played multiple gimme games. Like, so that's the thing, right? So, and like USC played Stanford a pretty good defense, and they also played Fresno State a pretty good defense too, right? So, that like some of these numbers could be over or under inflated depending on the schedules they've played, right? I kind of like so
true.
yeah. So it's kind of interesting. Grammar's being that high is actually kind of interesting to me, but yeah.
And I think a lot of it's due to the that gimme against New Mexico State that really goosed his numbers quite a bit. Um, Interesting. The other part is just the bottom. This is always good to see if there are any kind of opportunities to bet against teams. 10th from the bottom, Taylor Powell of Eastern Michigan, who just won on the road at Arizona State. I bring that up because there might be a little shine on Eastern Michigan that might not be well deserved considering their quarterback is so bad. Seventh from the bottom, Cole Snyder of Buffalo. Buffalo could really easily lose 10 games without even trying here. They might even go 0 and 12. Things are pretty bleak. If they lost a Sacred Heart. Can't really say that anything's a gimme at this point for them, and they've got problems all over. Six from the bottom. This actually could present an opportunity because there's still a little shine on the Georgia Southern Eagles. Is Kyle Van Treese, six from the bottom in QB plus play. He had some good numbers against Nebraska, which just shows what he's done everywhere else against defenses that haven't quit and are actually coached by adults. Fifth of the bottom, Jeff Sims at Georgia Tech. We've talked enough about him. Fourth from the bottom, Jack Sapelek, I think that's how you pronounce it, of Western Michigan. This could be one of those sneaky, underrated guys that's really struggling. He's a freshman too. Kind of to that point, as San Jose State opened up a 4-point favorite, and I think that's already up to 7 now. So I think that some of the sharper people might be picking up about the, what do they call it, like the fresh fish in prison or the weakest lamb to pick on up out in the wild. And second from the bottom is Grant Wells of Virginia Tech. Um, I'm kind of waiting to bet against him, but there's some really I'm of very different minds against them this week. They're hosting West Virginia, and I think that West Virginia is so psychotic and just oh whatever that I can't bet against him in this spot. But this man loves to throw interceptions.
I've already bet on West Virginia. Might do some more. I think I grabbed a look ahead West Virginia -1.5. That got to West Virginia -3. A lot of money's going to be coming in Virginia Tech. I don't think that's well deserved at all. I have West Virginia as big favorites. This is a Thursday night game, and the thing
Hmm.
is, the Thursday. The usually obviously it's competing with Thursday night football, but like the Thursday night football is bad. It's the Browns versus the Steelers. The Steelers, God help Mitch Trubisky and the Steelers. God, that was horrible on the weekend against a horrible New England Patriots team. But also you've got Jacoby Brissett and the Browns. They're not bad, but they somehow blew a 13-point lead with 120 with a minute and 22 left to go in the game against the Jets. They gave up like a 40-yard TD bomb, and that just got them this thing. Then the Jets got an onside kick, and then they ran down the field. Got like so it was just that was crazy that even happened. Um, but yeah, like I mean, I think the Browns probably win that game, but that's gonna be an ugly, ugly game. There's just an horrible, ugly game. So we've got two great games on Thursday night now. We've got Coastal Carolina at Georgia State, already on Coastal. No idea why that line is -2.5 for Coastal. I think it's because they didn't cover against Buffalo, and then also West Virginia versus Virginia Tech. I like West Virginia there. So yeah, that's. I think now's the right time to fade. I actually was on Virginia Tech a couple weeks ago when they played Boston College and they just crushed them. But yeah, I'm on West Virginia now. So let's start getting the anti Virginia Tech money going. Let's go.
Okay. Um, my metrics on the receivers, the top receivers in versus only FBS, the best combination of both efficiency and explosiveness. Number one, he was high last week. Rashee Rice of SMU, just again pointing out, reinforcing that SMU's got a real offense. Number two, Ollie Jennings, the third of Old Dominion. If you've seen Old Dominion play, I've seen him twice. This is like the only guy that knows how to play football on the offensive side of the ball. It seems like God bless this kid for being so high, because he's literally the only threat that they have. It's amazing. Number three, Keelan Stokes from Tulsa. And number six, Juan Carlos Santana, also from Tulsa. Just including these together, because last week I highlighted this Davis Brin of Tulsa. And it's not just a little dink and dunk offense. He's got, excuse me, two receivers in the top six in efficiency and explosiveness. So I'm going to look for opportunities to play Tulsa, maybe against a team that just looks like they can't keep up. Maybe American Conference junior version of USC. Just looking for that one team that might be okay on defense, but just doesn't have any punch on offense, and just look to play Tulsa there at some point. And then number nine, this is interesting. By far the highest rated tight end is Griffin Hebert of Louisiana Tech. I'm not sure what to make of that. I don't know if this guy's like just an all-star tight end, or if this speaks to Louisiana Tech just having a bunch of pieces that don't fit, and this is the only one that really fits. I don't know. I'm just going to keep an eye on this for now. But that was interesting that Louisiana Tech, and they have a new coach who's offensive minded, Sonny Cumby. He was calling plays at Texas Christian last year. Um, I don't know. Just going to keep an eye on that. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and again, it's interesting that some of those receivers like they're at these are not the top schools, right? These are like SMU, Old Dominion, Tulsa, right? Like these are not like obviously you have a lot of good receivers at the top schools, and the thing is we're now in an environment where you might see some of the like before it was a lot harder for these guys to transfer now, but because of the transfer portal, you could see some of these guys at I mean USC obviously, but you could see them at like Florida or Alabama. You could see them at any one of those schools next year. And then the thing is again, now they're going to start getting picked up by NFL scouts, right? So at that point then some of these guys who maybe would have never made the NFL or would have been like an undrafted rookie or something, now they actually might get to see NFL play. So, yeah, some of these guys, because of the transfer portal, we might start seeing a lot more of these guys get picked up and get much more bigger careers because of this.
Yeah, to that point too, this is interesting, something to keep an eye on. You might see like in these G5 conferences, little kind of, I don't know if you call them like clusters or flagships of just like Tulsa. Maybe they just really get an offensive identity. And as long as you have a good quarterback, maybe they might just have, receivers coming in from like other G5 and maybe high FCS schools just to say, hey, Davis Brin, the guy, he's thrown for like over 1,000 yards, I think, just through 3 weeks. Maybe that just kind of gets the best of the rest, if you will. And you're going to have these little, very distinctive kind of programs. You get a defensive minded coach, and he gets a lot more of his kind of guys to play. I think that could actually be a really cool part of the transfer portal era. Okay. USC update. So after the win, unexpectedly easy against Fresno State is where we stand. Caleb Williams, as we talked about earlier, is now fourth in QB plus. He actually, at 235, which is really, really high, he actually had a pretty low yards per attempt in the first half. That was interesting. For most of the first half, he was throwing for about 5 yards an attempt, which was very unusual. We'll get back to that in a little bit. Jordan Addison, I've got as now the 19th most productive receiver in my receiver metrics. 3 straight games with no turnovers, and that happened only 4 times in the preceding 3 seasons, which is a great sign. On defense, this is interesting. I know that the defense gets a lot of criticism, and I think we just need to be fair on where it's pointed. The pass defense is number 16 in all of FBS. When we're talking about the QB plus allowed, and actually of the teams that have played 3 or more FBS opponents, it's second in all of FBS, behind only Michigan. And I know a lot of that is interceptions, but even if we just take interceptions completely out of the equation, they're still 45th. And they've actually faced 2 very good quarterbacks in Tanner McKee, and then they got Hayner for more than a half too. So um, they've played some quality quarterbacks. They have another one coming up in Corvallis, as we talked about in Nolan. But the problem is not the pass defense. The run defense is another thing because they're getting gashed pretty consistently. The defense on total is 65th in yards per play in the nation, which obviously needs some help. Don't know if it's fixable this year though. Just the talent is pretty sparse in the front seven. One thing that was interesting is it kind of appeared to me just because the defense having some issues, especially the run defense, it kind of seems to me that Lincoln Riley, when he's calling plays, he's kind of wearing 3 hats. It's first of all, he's got the offensive coordinator hat, which is, like no amount of points is enough. We just want to do more and get more. He's kind of got a defensive coordinator's hat on too, where he knows his defense is struggling and they can't stop the run. So he basically is going to, it seems like he's trying to make the opponents pass reliant by scoring a lot early and getting them so they have to be one dimensional early just to kind of take the focus off the run. Then the other thing, and this goes back to that weird stat about Williams was just throwing for 5 yards a pass or per attempt for most of the first half. I think he's got kind of a game management hat on too, just to say my defense is not that good. I'm going to make the other team one dimensional, but I need to keep my defense off the field too. So he seemed against Fresno to really settle for a lot of more of the shorter stuff, and actually kind of value chewing up the clock a lot more than usual. A lot less of the quick strike stuff, and I don't know if that was by design or if that's just how things turned out. But it was interesting, and it was a little bit uncharacteristic, and we'll see if that's a thing now going forward, or if it was just one of these things that's just how the plays turned out. One other thing that was interesting to me too, Mark Helfrich, I really like him on Fox Sports. He pointed out that on fourth down, Riley seemed to really like to use the zone replay. And I bring this up because this is something that I could just see him doing, just continuing to do this, and then in a big spot, actually showing that and then passing out of that action for just a huge play. Just something to keep in the back of your mind at some point later down the road in a bigger game when there's a fourth down. And the opponents think they've got figured out what we like to do. Um, USC, they opened at giving 5. I think it's up to 6 or so now at Oregon State. Does that sound
Six
right?
6.5, I think.
6.5. Yeah, that's way too rich for my blood. I had it -2 in the preseason pod, and honestly, I just kind of have this as a pick'em game. I can't bet USC here. I don't know if you've got different opinions on that. If you like Oregon State, or if this is a pass for you.
I do actually. I like USC minus 6.5 a little bit. I do really think this USC team is good. I mean, the thing of it is, Oregon State beat Fresno State, and then USC just pretty much destroyed Fresno State. Now, it was basically a close game between Oregon State and Fresno State. But I think at a certain point, you've got to say, okay, I think this USC team is really good. And at a certain point, like, I think there's going to be a point in time when we're not going to see 6.5s anymore. We're going to start seeing like minus tens, minus nine and a
Mhm.
half, minus. Actually, we already saw 9. But like when you start getting these competitive games, like they don't. I don't think they have to play Oregon this year. But like when they play Utah, we're going to start seeing minus tens, minus 13 and a halves. Like,
Really?
well, at a certain
Wow.
point, you have like. I mean, well, like I think this the USC team is actually legit. Like 12-1 to win the college football playoff. I mean, here's the thing, like, and I've been starting to think about this now. I think you give it a couple of weeks before you start really thinking about this. But like, what are your top 14? What are you like if you had to make the college football playoff right now? What 4 teams are there? And with one important caveat too, because don't pick like Ohio State and Michigan because they'll have to play right in a de facto elimination game, right? So,
Yeah.
what would be assuming that those games play out a certain way? Because like theoretically Clemson, although they're fifth right now, we'll talk about Clemson later. But like assume you were high on Clemson, right? Clemson's fifth. Know that Ohio State and Michigan have to play each other. So theoretically, one of them will fall below Clemson, so one move up, right? So what would be your top four in the college football playoff right now?
Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, and I'd probably put Oklahoma, just considering they looked so good on both sides of the ball on the road.
I think I'm similar with you. I'm Ohio State, Georgia, and then this is going to throw you for a loop. Oklahoma, USC. I don't think Bama.
Wow.
Because here's the thing, I think Georgia's going to crush them in the SEC championship game, and I think there's a chance they could trip up against like Arkansas or something. I
Fair.
think someone trips them up.
I
I
think they play Tennessee actually.
yeah, Tennessee. They play Arkansas before they get to the championship game. I think someone trips them up because this out like I mean obviously you can't really look at much when they're crushing. Who they even crushed this last week? What
Yeah,
was
they're
it?
at Tennessee. They play Tennessee every year, but it's at Tennessee. That could be the sneaky gotcha game. Tennessee hasn't beaten them forever.
Yeah, Tennessee could be like
Forever.
minus like you could get like Tennessee plus 21 or something like that. Like that's the thing.
Yeah.
So this is yeah. So I think Alabama trips up and then Georgia runs over them. And then the thing of it is then you've got 3 good offenses and 1 good defense. And who wins that? I don't know. Right? Like the thing is you have to start thinking about requirements. Like what's Oklahoma's requirement to get to the championship game is sweep Big 12 play, win the conference, right? USC go undefeated, win the conference. Ohio State probably go undefeated and beat Michigan and then win the conference. And then you'll end up playing like Minnesota or something. Georgia, okay, just win the East and then win the conference, right? Alabama, if they lose, like the thing of it was, we were close last year to Alabama not making it, right? Because had Alabama
Yeah.
lost, had Georgia won the SEC championship game, and had a couple other things gone right, like had Oklahoma State beaten Baylor, there's a non-zero chance that it would have been like Georgia
Yeah.
1, Michigan 2, uh who was 3? I can't remember who 3 was, but like basically Oklahoma State could have been ranked ahead of Bama. They might have taken a one-loss Oklahoma State ahead of basically a two-loss Bama. So yeah, like it's crazy. I don't know, like I don't know if Bama makes it or not. I don't think I almost don't think they make it.
Yeah, and one you left out was the one that really started the whole chaos at Auburn.
Cincy.
If Auburn had not just crapped the bed late in that game and just given that game back to Alabama, Alabama doesn't make the playoff last year.
Yep. Or had Florida beaten them, Florida losing by a point,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Failed 2 point conversion. So there are so many ways in which Alabama could have had an extra loss last year. And again, like look, they just beat Texas by 2. A Texas team that lost their starting quarterback early in the game. They beat
yeah.
them by 2. Like Alabama has to play Arkansas. That could be a watch out for that game. That's coming up in a couple of weeks. They have Tennessee, Texas A&M again. Hell, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. potentially, depending on how that like. So this is the thing. I could see like a Georgia, USC, Ohio State, Oklahoma championship, which on that would be an amazing whatever day that is, because I think this year the New Year's Day is a Saturday. So whatever day that is this year, that's going to be an amazing day of football. So
Yeah. Okay, next, my future bets. One I like the best, UNLV right now, that over 4 wins is looking really good. They had almost 600 yards. They ran for 360, QB plus 124 in that big win over North Texas. Ones that we're throwing in the bin, Utah over 5.5 wins. That's not happening. Or UTEP, pardon me. And then Miami, Ohio to win the MAC. Their quarterback was the reason I really like them, and he's out indefinitely, Brett Gabbert. So his backup's not playing so bad, but that's not going to win the MAC for them. The hot seat, you know what? We all know what's going on here. The only change is going to be Herm Edwards, and he kind of didn't make it through the front door. He was just escorted out by the bouncer before he could grab a table there.
yeah, he was he even on our list last week?
No, he was an addition, and
Yeah,
then
he
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 was just shown the
he
door.
wasn't even on the list, and he catapulted from not even on the list to fired
Yes.
in 1 week. That is impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing of it was, yeah, losing to a MAC team is bad, but like it's not like that bad. Like I don't think it was like immediately fired bad. I think there's other stuff going on in the background. But like yeah, I think it's kind of funny that they're like, okay, you lose to Oklahoma State, which is a top 10 team by the way, apparently according to rankings, and then losing to a MAC team. I don't think that's necessarily immediate grounds for firing, but apparently it was. Because they literally met him in the end. Like there's a video of them meeting him in the
Yeah.
end zone, and then they're like, so. But yeah, so
It's not for football. I think it's basically taking the temperature and just saying the sanctions have basically poisoned the program, and if we do this now, maybe we'll be show some mercy when it comes to the upcoming sanctions. So
also if here's the thing, if Nebraska's moving, and like the thing is, you're both. I mean, obviously, I say Nebraska's probably a better job than Arizona State, but you're probably gonna be competing for kind of the same candidates. Like if you have a candidate you like, chances are Nebraska might be trying to compete with them too. So
yeah,
if you're Arizona State and like there's someone like, say you like Matt Campbell or say you like Lance Leopold or something, you want to go to them for, you don't want Nebraska to be the one to go to them first, right? So you, because the thing is they also have a negative, right? Because there are probably impending sanctions on Arizona State, right? Nebraska doesn't have actual sanctions because they just had randomly, um, thing was suspended for a week because he had extra special teams coach on, which is insane because
yeah,
their special teams was horrendous and like they
yeah,
needed the coaching, but they still didn't even help them. But no, that's still, I still love that fact that he got suspended for a week. They had an extra special teams coach on in their practices, and then it still didn't help them. Just amazing. But no, like if these movements are going to start happening, you want to start looking for that coach as soon as possible. Yeah, losing to a MAC team is pretty bad, but I don't think it's immediately getting fired bad. But yeah, these other ones are going to be fun though. Like there's the thing is now the temperature's heating up on some of these ones. Like I actually just saw a bit ago there was an Atlantic piece that said majority of like they polled ex Georgia Tech players and like the majority of them want Jeff Collins gone. It's just like wow, this is amazing. You're randomly asking people who went to Georgia Tech, should we fire the guy? They're like yes. Like that's the level of this year. It's just amazing. So, but the
yeah.
thing is outside of that though, there's not a ton of obvious ones. Like outside of obviously Collins and Harson, not a ton of them, right? Like there's a couple maybe in the second tier, but like Power Five, most of them are pretty okay, I think, for now at least.
Yeah,
Outside of
Darrell.
these,
I mean, Darrell's gone. I think he's gone. I think that was just a.
for
Well,
Colorado,
it's either we're buying our time or that was like a. You know what? Larry Scott screwed us over, and we don't have any money, and we spent the money that we got from Mel Tucker's buyout, and so get used to it, folks. It's going to be like this until we get the next TV deal.
yeah,
That, that's what I think that memo from the athletic director was about.
okay,
All right. My group of 5 New Year's bowl bid ranking. New Year's bowl bid rankings. Not who I think is the best G5 teams, but who's got the best path to getting to that bowl bid. Number 1, Cincinnati. I think they're still the best team in the best conference in the group of 5. Number 2, again, the one loss Sun Belt champ, if such an animal exists. Kind of a tough week for the Sun Belt. We're not going to get into the deeper dive, but man, there were just some really tough beats in that conference. Number 3, SMU. I'm interested in they were gutsy at Maryland, and they gave Maryland a lot more than I think Maryland wanted. For Tulane, I'm saying this because the coach knows how to win from his time at Georgia Southern. Their defense is for real. They get the end. They've got chances to beat some good teams and actually just make a run up the rankings if they're undefeated at that point. And fifth, I still have Toledo. I'm not worried about the Ohio State game. That's going to happen. Um, the big game is this upcoming week against San Diego State, and we'll talk about that in the next episode. Speaking of the next episode, the Narduzzi's, we're going to move to the next episode, but do you want to sneak in your anti Narduzzi at this
Yeah,
point?
I actually will give it to it's a bit of a surprise, but I'm gonna give it to Dan Lamming of
Oh,
Oregon. Here's the thing, and we kind of mentioned this a little bit before, but honestly, the game plan of like you're sitting there and you're like, okay, Bo Nix is our quarterback,
yeah.
so we should plan around that. So we're gonna run the ball twice as many times as we pass the ball, and like that Bo Nix is like, please just let me throw a long pass, please, please, please let me throw like a 40-yard pass. Come on, please, it'll be awesome. He's like, no, 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 you have to get up by at least 2 scores before you can throw a pass more than 40 yards out of the field. It's like, okay, fine. So then they finally blow it out, and he's like, okay, fine. Now you can throw the long pass, and then they throw it. It actually connects it. Like it's the icing on the cake of the blowout. But like that is really good coaching when you're like, okay, we have Bo Nix, and he wants to do these crazy, insane Bo Nix plays, but we shouldn't let him do that until we're up safely enough in the game. And like, there's the commitment to running the ball against a BYU team. Like again, this BYU team was actually kind of tired. Like the more I think about it, this BYU team was kind of tired. They had played in overtime the week before against Baylor, so like they were tired, a bit beat up, and you just run the ball, run, 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 and then you just follow that up with Bo Nix just with a 70-yard bomb. Like that's actually a pretty decent game plan. And Bo Nix didn't have an interception. I mean, they only let him through 18 times, so he didn't have an interception off that. But like, that's not bad at all. Like that's actually figuring out your strength. And like again, obviously I'll have more picks next week. I'm actually probably gonna be betting against Oregon this week. But like, yeah, I don't. That's not bad at all, honestly. If the game plan going forward is okay, let's just not give Bo Nix the ball many times. Let's just run the ball instead. That's actually a feasible game plan. So, yeah,
You're really testing me here. Okay. I'm going to just engender goodwill from the college football gambling gods and say, great job, Dan Lanning. And I'll just keep it at that.
he gets 1 week of goodwill because it
Yes.
actually it was a really good game plan. This isn't saying he's an amazing coach, but that was a good game plan. I gotta say, like that, just running the ball and not having Bo Nix throw an interception is actually a good plan. But
I will definitely agree with that. No, that was a well conceived game plan, and
fair,
we'll see if it's repeated anytime soon.
probably not, probably not. So okay, we will see you guys in part 2.